Wilfred Owen was born in 1893 and died at 25 in 1918. He was born into a family whose circumstances were initially quite comfortable. For the first 3 years of his life, he lived with his mother and father in a very large house called Place Wilmot. However, once his grandfather died, the house was quickly sold in March 1897, and Wilfred, his siblings, mother and father spent the next 10 years or so moving between Birkenhead, near Liverpool, and Shrewsbury, where his father worked for the railway, eventually becoming a station master of Birkenhead Woodside Station. Whilst you may think, having seen the house that Owen was born in, that Wilfred and his family lived a very prosperous life, this is not completely accurate. Whilst it is true that his family couldn't be described as poor, once his grandfather died, there was not much money left over after extensive family debt was paid off from the sale of the family home. The impact of this debt was so great that 14 years later, Wilfred's family couldn't afford to send him to the University of London without him securing a scholarship, which he didn't. In 1913, Owen moved to France and worked as a private tutor, teaching English and French at a language school. From 1915, Owen trained with the Artists' Rifles. This was later to become the territorial branch of the SAS. He then became a second lieutenant in the Manchester Regiment and saw firsthand the horrific conditions that soldiers faced in the trenches of World War I. Owen was clearly intelligent, had started writing poetry in 1904, and during his younger years, he was a strong believer in Christianity. He even spent 2 years between 1911 and 1913 working as an assistant to and living in the vicarage of the Vicar of Dunstan. However, it is around this time that he began to become disillusioned with the church because he didn't believe that it adequately helped those in need. On the battlefield, in the trenches, Owen's disillusionment evolved. Still irritated by the church and initially frustrated by the soldiers under his command that he described as loutish and expressionless lumps, he became angry with the way military generals and commanders lived fortunate lives away from the trenches, whilst the men involved in the day-to-day combat were exposed to extreme weather, insanitary living conditions, poor food, and the inevitability and futility of death. Indeed, in Exposure, Owen portrays how pointless the whole situation is. The soldiers, including himself, are here to fight the Germans. However, the most significant battle they fight is with the unrelenting cold weather for survival. The bullets of the enemy aren't on target, but the weather seems to focus its attacks on the soldiers, who, abandoned by God and ignored by their generals, are slipping into their graves. Death is inevitable and pointless.